Hello everyone and welcome back. It's a very hot summer night, and I think it's the perfect time for a cold drink and some scary stories. I'm also sharing again my creative process for today's thumbnail with a speed drawing, and this is actually available in my shop as a print. I need some suggestions for future videos, so I'm between scary stories to help you sleep and scary lighthouse stories. It's your choice, so leave me a comment below. But for now, guys, grab your flashlight and follow me into the darkness. The reason we grow out of our childhood innocence and out of our childlike fears is because we eventually realize that reality is much bigger than us. Childhood fears are not always based in this reality. They are manifested only in the dark corners of our homes and our minds. It was this reason the person in our closet or under our bed was there to scare us and only us. The figures hidden in the shadows of our basement were only there if your mom or dad weren't around. Our fears were not objective realities. They were figments of our imagination. The thing I fear now doesn't care if I am around to see it or that I don't have an imagination. It exists within and outside of my mind. It permeates my reality. It leaves its mark everywhere I am. It is the darkest in the moment I blink. It is the blur in my peripherals. It is the evil in my home. There are things I've seen, felt maybe. I might have only dreamt of them or imagined their horror in a passing thought. These things are real though. They create real emotions within me. They make me sweat and they deeply disturb my mental state. You know that feeling you get when you come across something on the internet so dark that it leaves a jump in your throat for the rest of the day? My home is alive without feeling. Deep down, I know the lump in my throat is there not because I can't control my emotions, but because my emotions are completely justified. Whether I'm taking a night walk to clear my head or staring at the ceiling above my bed until morning comes, this lump feels defensive in its existence, as if my body is reacting to something very real and threatening. I've had a hard time sleeping recently. I can never get comfortable. Every position feels heavy. My body feels like it is under stress, and there is a very real pressure in my throat. I will often spend nights on the couch in the basement living room that sits right outside my bedroom. The television's lone glow burns its images into my head. My eyes become bloodshot as I stare at the screen until I begin to feel tired, and I am forced to close them. This is the only way I can fall asleep, and I feel it has begun to take a toll on my sanity. Sometimes I will find myself on the couch, staring at the television at 7 in the morning. Other times, I will randomly become aware, still sitting in front of the turned-off television, my eyes strained, staring into the dark nothingness of it. Sometimes, I will come to sit quite upright in my bed, staring forward as if to be watching television, eyes strained and aching, staring off into the darkness of my bedroom. One night after a day where I believed I would die if I'd stayed awake any longer, I told myself I would try to sleep in my own bed by relaxing and focusing on some of my thoughts. I woke up on the couch in the living room, quite upright and aware. I was drawn through the corner of my eye to my open bedroom. The tall figure stretched from the roof of my bed, not sure if it was standing or hanging. Its back was to me, its head sunk low, staring down over my sleeping body in the bed. I saw my body wake up and sit upright. My body in the bed sleepishly jerked ever so slightly, the figure with it, and I felt that same ache behind my eyes as both my body in the bed and the tall figure glared at me from the darkness of the bedroom. I was a Boy Scout. though it's been a few years since I've had much to do with them, but that's a story for another time. For those of you who aren't familiar with the program, there are these things you can get called merit badges, which basically are like, hey, I learned a bit about this topic. Most years, trips will go on official scout camp to work of stuff like that for a week or so. This is an experience I had at Camp Meriwether, which is on the Oregon coast. Now, there are 3 ghost stories running around the camp while I was there. First was a Bigfoot ripoff called The Cape Ape, which was about as believable as most stories of that kind. Next were demon leaves, which were leaves with faces carved into them. The last story is about a shipwreck from 150 years ago or so. A Norwegian lumber barge called the Storm Whale was caught in a storm and dragged into the Cape, where Camp Meriwether now resides. It was broken up and the wreckage washed ashore near the Cape. Only the captain survived, trapped in the wreckage, while his crew and his young wife drowned in the storm. He was found by some natives and died a few weeks later from gangrene in one of his shattered limbs. Apparently, he went mad from grief before the end, rambling on about how he should have gone down with the ship so that the others could have survived. It's probably been embellished over the years, but that's how I heard it. Now, the last story is the only one that I know had any credence to it. And I know because I had a run-in with one of the ghosts from the wreck. I was working on my astronomy merit badge, which involves stargazing. The best place to do this was down on the beach, where there were no trees to get in the way. I had to sketch the positions of several constellations at different times during the night, so I figured it would just be easier to sleep on the beach itself. So, me and a few other boys that were working on the astronomy merit badge got approval from the leadership and camped on the beach. It was a new moon, ideal for stargazing because the stars are the only things in the sky. No one from my troop, besides me, was working on the badge, so when it came time to set up our sleeping bags and everyone separated into their little groups, I was one of a few loners who set up away from anyone else. I figured I could avoid most of the noise and rest well on the soft sand. I took my first sketch of Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, Aquila, and Cassiopeia, and then set an alarm for 2 hours and tried to fall asleep. The waves beating on the shore wasn't relaxing like a white noise generator. It was loud and not quite regular enough that I could get used to it. The wind was pretty chilly, and despite digging the sand into a small windbreak, it tore through my sleeping bag like a knife. It was also damp and cold enough to be uncomfortable. It wasn't easy to fall asleep, but I managed. I woke up to a ghastly scream, though the moment I opened my eyes, it faded. I sat up in my sleeping bag and looked around. Everyone else was still lying down. I checked my alarm, and there was around 5 minutes until it went off. I did a sketch of the positions of my chosen constellations and reset my alarm. It was cold enough that my fingers were numb, putting the final touches on the sketch, and it was good lying back down inside my bag behind the windbreak. Sleep was quicker to come this time, though I felt uneasy. It was that feeling you get when something is watching you. I woke up a few minutes before my alarm again and just lay there with my eyes closed. My face was cold from the damp breeze, and there was a pressure on my eyes. I opened them a fraction and saw someone standing at my feet. I leaped up from my yelp and looked around. No one was there. Everyone was lying down in the sand. It took a few minutes to calm down enough to sketch the star positions. It took even longer to calm down enough to fall back asleep. I dreamt for the first time that night. It was raining softly on the beach, and I was sitting in the sand next to a woman. She had long blonde hair, pulled into a loose bun, and grey eyes, like an overcast sky. Not obviously beautiful, but thin and strong and severe. She offered me her hand, and I took it. It was like ice. She pulled me up and stepped close. "I'm cold," she whispered. As her body was cold, she pressed it against mine. "Will you help us get warm?" I nodded, and me being a 14-year-old boy, pulled her closer despite the chill. She smiled and began leading me by the hand towards where the ocean had been. Now it was a forest. We walked among the trees for a while, and her hand grew warmer. We paused in a clearing, and she pulled me close again. Her body was less like ice, but still chilly. She placed her limbs on mine, and we kissed. She grew warmer and warmer. Then, from nowhere, I felt a burning hot weight on my shoulder. I turned and woke up at once. Water rushed over my head as a wave passed over me. The water was freezing cold, and it rushed into my mouth bitter with salt. Something cold was dragging me forward, but a strong, hot arm was dragging me back. I had no strength to help either. It was gone, and all I could do was allow myself to be part of this tug of war. After a long time, I opened my eyes, and starlight touched them. I was soaking wet on the sand, and someone was panting heavily above me. I sucked in air heavily. "Can you walk?" he said. I pushed myself up. My limbs were weak, and I was shaking in the cold. "Good, let's get you warm." We walked to the lodge, and I drank some hot chocolate. He was gone for a while, and returned with my things. "You saw her, didn't you?" I nodded. He told me the tale of the storm well then, and walked me back to my trip's campsite. I never caught his name, and he wasn't one of the camp's counselors, or at least, I never saw him again for the rest of the week. Oddly enough, my notebook held the sketches of star positions I needed to get the merit badge, despite me having never drawn the last two. A few strange symbols were drawn on the last page of the notebook in green ink. I didn't draw them in. I don't own a green pen. I've seen those symbols a few places since, on old buildings in the woods, and once in the graveyard. I try to avoid places where I see them, but it's nice to know that someone is watching out. During spring break, my buddies and I decided to go on a trip to Ocean City, Maryland. We got lucky enough for most of us to have our breaks line up during the same week, so we figured we better make the most of it. Ocean City is certainly nothing too glamorous, but it's cheap and close to home, and not like it matter. We figured we'd be shit-faced the whole time anyway. So we loaded up my car and set out toward the water. Kirk, Roger, Jack, and I, all best friends, were all sharing laughs in the car while getting as drunk as possible for the long ride ahead of us. Kirk, one of the most responsible of my friends, didn't drink much, so even though it was my car, it's good to have a friend like Kirk, someone who can keep the sanity while me, Roger, and Jack acted like dumbasses. We arrived at our 2-star motel later that evening. We unpacked, were feeling good, and were excited for the fun nights to come. For our first night, we decided to go to the clubs. We were not yet 21, so we all sported our clearly fake IDs. By the time of the night, I was way beyond gone, and the bouncers would not let me enter the club. They let all my friends go by, but stopped me and took my ID. I tried to put up a fight, insisting that it was real. "Take a walk, or I'll let the cops involved," the large man said to me. So I stomped my way back to the hotel, alone and pissed. I opened the door to the empty room to be greeted by a bunch of bags and a shitty bed. Even though I was already loaded, I thought that more booze would be a great idea. I poured a nice vodka and lemonade mixie and relaxed while watching some TV. The low thread count sheets actually felt quite nice as I sank into the bed. I was just beginning to doze off when I heard a knock on the door. The knocks had a strong sense of urgency, as if the person was excited or in trouble or something. I figured it was one of my friends that had come home early from the club. "Use your fucking key! My legs are useless!" I yelled. Instead of a response, a barrage of more frantic knocks. "Oh fuck!" I grumbled as I stumbled out of bed and started toward the door. "I swear to God, I'm going to shit directly in your mouth when I open this door," I said, nearly gibberish. I swung the door open and my jaw nearly dropped. Wait a second, what? I thought you were in Miami. I thought I'd surprise you." "Surprise?" My girlfriend responded holding a bottle of my favorite wine. I wrapped her up in a big hug and told her to come in. We took a seat and poured 2 glasses of wine. She kept staring at me with these intense eyes. I thought it was because she knew I was shit-faced already. She didn't ask where everyone else was. She just went straight to the question. "Do you want to go to the ocean?" "Nah, babe. Let's just hang out here. We can go tomorrow. I really don't want to walk right now." She nudged my arm, still staring at me. "Come on. It will be fun. Let's go to the ocean." "Oh fuck, please don't make me go. We can have sex on the beach if we go." "Well, I guess we're going," I said, catching a second wind. We took the wine and started walking toward the beach. My girlfriend seemed so excited to be going to the ocean. She kept looking at me and smiling. "I can't wait to get to the ocean. I really love the ocean." "Yeah, totally. The ocean's the shit," I said, starting to take notice of her strange behavior. We kept walking through the dark when I felt my phone vibrate. It was a Snapchat from my girlfriend. I looked up at her, walking next to me. She hadn't taken out her phone the whole time she'd been with me. I opened the Snapchat and it was a picture of my girlfriend's hotel room in Miami. The caption read, "Miss you, babe." I looked up from my phone to the girl standing next to me, this time with noticeable fear in my eyes. "Hey, babe, I'm pretty drunk. I think I'm gonna go head back." She grabbed my arm, gripping it hard. Her face twisted from a smile into a nasty grimace. "We're going to the beach. You told me we were going to the ocean." And that's when the adrenaline kicked in. I broke her grasp, pushed her down, and started running for my life back to the hotel. I looked back to see if she was running after me, but she was nowhere to be found. When I turned back around, I bumped full force into some guy walking on the sidewalk, knocking him into his friends. "You got a fucking problem with me?" Before I could say anything, he threw a hook and landed it right in my temple. I saw stars and blanked out. I woke up back in my room the next day, to my friends blasting Thunderstruck and chugging beers. "Get up, sleeping beauty. You already got a full night's rest. Come on, we're gonna head down to the beach," Jack said to me. I looked at all my friends, initially filled with confusion and fear. It was a nightmare. The whole shitty ordeal was a nightmare. A wave of relief rolled over me and I got up, packed a bag full of drinks and headed down the beach with my friends, ready to make up for the night before. I was sitting in the sand, sipping my drink, and finally taking it easy on the beach. Between the crashing waves, the hot sun, and the perfectly mixed margarita, it was a perfect day. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. It was a Snapchat from my girlfriend. It was simply a black screen with a caption, "I really love the ocean. Come with me into the ocean. It's so great in here." Thoughts raced into my mind. She was in Miami, but this seemed a lot like the shit we went down last night in the nightmare. But she was in Miami, at the ocean. She was probably just having a good time and wanted to tell me about it. I was not going to let this ruin my trip. I took another sip of my drink and tried to relax. I looked at all the people having fun in the ocean in front of me, and I could swear that way behind the mass of people in the ocean was a girl that looked a lot like my girlfriend, staring back at me. It has been 3 weeks since I have slept through the night, and longer since I've truly felt rested. My life has become a dull hum of normalcy. It feels like I'm a passenger on a train with lightly frosted windows, just watching, moving, and watching. It started with a dream, I think. It was a normal day. I arrived back from work around 6, made dinner enough for 3 as always, and as always, I ate alone and packed portions for lunch over the next several days. I browsed Reddit, watched a Netflix movie that was not gripping enough to remember, bathed and turned in around 11. I awoke screaming and dripping with sweat at 3 in the morning. I had dreamt that I was in a castle. The walls were stone. I remember being quite lucid as I examined my surroundings. Soon, I was drawn to the bright crimson sundown and watched as the ripples of red cloud darkened the sky. It was then that I saw those clouds split, wrenched apart like the parting of the Red Sea. Through the parting was an enormous blade edge swinging down through the sky and headed directly for the castle, directly for me. The panic I felt was intense. It sent me tearing from that dream with a dread that I have never experienced. Such a ridiculous scenario, an impending ox piercing the sky, but I cannot express enough how this impacted me. I was distraught. I felt like something had broken inside my chest and would never again be whole. I spent the rest of that night tossing and turning. More than anything, I was afraid that if I went back to sleep, I would be back there. I would have to relieve that fear again. But that was the last dream I've had, the last one I remember anyway. Each time I would fall asleep after that, I found myself instantly awake in the morning, as if only seconds had passed since I'd fallen asleep. There was a hole there, and I felt it. I slept, but never rested, never recharged. A week of that missing time, each night passed, and I grew more and more exhausted. The lights dimmed, the sounds around me withdrew themselves, only the sharpest of emotions registered, and it grew worse. After that week, I began walking at 3 in the morning each night, and completely unable to go back to sleep. I did not wake as I did after the dream. There were no longer any dreams. A new numbness had spread through me, but there I was each night at 3, awake, feeling that I had fallen asleep seconds ago. There was nothing for it. I had only the chilly pre-dawn light, hot tea, and my walls to keep me company. I tried something last night. Frustrated with this situation, I decided to stay awake. My plan was simple: go to sleep after 3 in the morning and see if the chains helped me sleep longer. Or better yet, result in restful sleep once again. I decided to watch an epic movie series after work to help pass the time. After entirely too much television and snacks that I barely managed to eat, I took a bath as it was nearing 3. I was in the bath for only 10 minutes when I heard that sound. It was as if something were tearing, but almost with a metallic sound. This sound was in the house. I jolted upright, splashing water across the clothes on the floor next to the tub. My hands gripped the edges as the hairs on the back of my neck stood at attention. My mind was busy, trying to determine the exact position of the fading noise, but my eyes were locked on the bathroom door. That door suddenly seemed much closer to the tub than I was used to. I did not move one single tense muscle as I heard those boots hitting the floor in the hallway. Each slow step echoed in my mind. Each step was closer to the door and spoke volumes about how little of a threat I was. They stopped at the other side of the bathroom door, and my focus remained there. It started to turn. The doorknob started to jiggle and turn, not as if a person had a hold of it and was trying to turn it, more like someone was trying to turn the door handle with chopsticks. The movements were small, weak, and short. This went on for what felt like an hour, but in retrospect was likely only a few seconds. And then it ended, quickly and unexpectedly. It did take me almost 20 minutes to decide that the phenomenon was over, and actually work up the courage to open the door. But I think I had felt the difference once the thing was gone. Whatever it was, I need help. I need to fix this. And so far, my best idea was lead me to something even more terrifying than what I had been dealing before. So, this might sound silly, but I think I'm being stalked, and it's happening at the stupidest place possible. At work. To give you a bit of background info, I worked at a company which produces parts for large metal constructions. I'll leave it vague like that, since if I say anything more about it, I could get into trouble. Anyways, I'm their IT guy, well, IT girl. But that's not important. What is important is that I spent my working hours alone in an office, which used to be the server room, and since the company doesn't care about their IT department as long as everything works, I share the office with 3 servers, which keep buzzing away by my ear every single day. I've been here for 3 years and by now, they are pretty much background noise, easily ignored. My day passed by pretty standard. Spent my time browsing the web and answering the most ridiculous of calls, like, my screen went to black all of a sudden, what do I do? Move your mouse, madam, or press any key on your keyboard. It's a mind-numbing job for most of the time, but it pays the bills. So, I was biding my time here until something better pops out. Things were pretty normal up until about 2 months ago. Before I go further, it's important to mention that unless I am physically present, my office is locked. I locked it even when I go to the bathroom, and the only one who has a key to it is the fire department guy, who is an elderly guy only standing here overnight and spends his time watching late TV shows and sipping beer. I've ruled him out right away, since he's actually a nice guy, but isn't crazy to go all the way up to the 3rd floor of my building unless he absolutely has to. As I was saying, strange things started happening. They're all minor stuff, but when you pile them up, they do become quite annoying, especially since they are now happening almost every other day. It started with stupid things, like me not be able to find the air conditioning remote control, which I always keep on the same spot on my desk. It was just gone one morning, and I found it later in an old file cabinet, which I haven't opened for at least half a year. Then, I have the scene set up under my PC screen, a blue fox and a brown dog touching noses, with 3 red roses scattered around their feet, all made out of paper. Said exactly like that, it means something to me, and I only disturb that scene when I'm cleaning the dust of the desk and screen. But even then, I put it back right as it was and don't touch it anymore. One morning, I came to find the scene disturbed. The brown dog appeared to be flicked off the desk, as it was now lying on the floor to the side, while the blue fox was said to sort of tremble over the roses, I suppose. At first, I comfort myself that it may have been a draft that disturbed it, but that would only knock them over, not get the fox's foot stuck in one of the roses. Then, other things started happening. My screen is always tilted in a certain direction to stop the light hitting it, so I am actually able to see what I'm doing. Now, almost every morning, and sometimes even during working hours, when I leave the office for a longer time of period, I have to tilt the screen back into its previous position. I keep losing post-it papers, and I can't leave my coffee in a cup when I leave, because by the time I get back, I find what's left of it spilled into my trash bin. Luckily, the trash bin is solid plastic, so none of it ever gets on the carpeting, but the cleaning lady has started looking at me weird, as every now and then I go by the bathroom to rinse the bin. Every now and then I'd find a post-it note pinned on my empty coffee mug, saying things like, "Stop," and "It's bad for you." I've complained about this to my colleagues, but I only got chuckles of them, and teasing me that I must have Richmond infestation. For those who don't know, Richmond is a character from the IT Crowd, a British comedy TV series, who is a creepy goth living in the server room, and everyone has forgotten about him. I laughed it off, of course, but to be honest, I was a bit creeped out. Up until now, I had tried to chalk all those incidents out to me going crazy from the buzzing of the servers and noticing silly stuff and then overthinking them. But 3 days ago, I got a late-night call from the night guard asking me what I was still doing at the office since it was close to 11 p.m. I informed him that I am at home, about to go to bed, but he didn't believe me as he said that he can see the light is turned on and he just saw someone walk by the window. Now, this got chills going down my spine. I never leave the lights on when I leave. Never. I always double check when I'm locking the door and take a look from the outside before I get into my car. I told this to the guard, and a moment later the call dropped. I tried calling back, but there was no answer. I went to work the next day and got halted by the same guard who was just overseeing the beginning of the shift and was about to head home. He informed me that as soon as I told him that it wasn't me walking around in there, he sprinted to the fireman grandpa and made him come with as he went by to my building to check what was going on. Of course, by the time they got there, the lights was off and there was no one in the office. I was almost ready to turn on my heel and head back home, as I was getting the heebie-jeebies from this whole thing. But the guard assured me that he'd leave a note for the guy taking over his shift and gave me the direct number to their phone, so I could call if anything happened, and he'd be up in a few minutes. I agreed. That was until I looked outside my window. I'll admit, the window hasn't been clean in a while, since the cleaning lady sort of likes to ignore my office. Too many wires and sensitive equipment, Mom. I'd get fired if I broke anything, was the excuse. So I did most of the cleaning myself, but somehow didn't get to the windows in a while. So there it was, in the thin layer of dust. A large smile face was drawn, staring at me with its poked-out eyes. I just kind of stared at it for a while, until I got the courage to get up, find a dust rag, and clean my window. I've reported it to the guard, who was not as worried about it as the last night shift, saying that someone is playing a prank on me. I have a hard time believing it. Who would do that? The fireman grandpa? He has a tough time to get up and go to the bathroom, let alone drag himself to the third floor or another building. The night guard? He's the one who warned me about it and doesn't have the key to my office. One of my colleagues? I doubt anyone would be crazy enough to get up in the middle of the night for 2 months straight, steal the key from the fireman grandpa and sneak in just to play pranks. And how the hell would they be able to do that during the day while I'm gone? I've tried asking for a security camera to be installed into my office, but they both refused it, saying that will cost him too much and there was no need for it, since nothing was broken or stolen. I don't have that kind of money either. While I was trying to work out an alternative solution to this problem, I remembered that since this is an old server room, the floors are actually hollow. This was built back in the day when servers took up the whole room and needed extra space for wiring. Technically, there's enough space under my floor for an adult person to crawl on. And now I'm actually and officially creeped out. I want out of there. I want whoever is doing this to stop dumping my coffee into my trash bin. I want them to stop messing up my origami scene. I want them to stop tilting my screen, hide my post-its and remote controls. And I want none of those creepy smile faces on my windows. One more incident like this and I'm calling quits of my job. I don't care how difficult it's going to get without a steady income of money. And you, Richmond, screw you. Before I leave, I'm pouring a pot of coffee under your floorboards. I was raised on the outskirts of a large city. The place used to be an old coal mining village with lots of old farms and buildings to explore. It became quite urbanized in the 60s, but we still found cool places to explore. Nothing out of the ordinary. Abandoned buildings, farmhouses, factories. We used to love exploring these old places. They were like pieces of history, just preserved and left to decay. At some point in history, someone was here doing something, and that fascinated us. We used to find a lot of old books, records and stuff, and be fascinated by them. We were always very careful not to destroy and vandalize, but as kids, I guess we were quite reckless. We never really understood the dangers back then. or cared. One time, we were exploring deep in a wooded area, but we stumbled upon a large double metal door built into the side, a mound of dirt and grass. The mound looked naturally placed and the door was partially covered by growth. It was quite hard to spot as we were so deep in the woods, and it was quite rare for people to come out this far. We could see the door was partially open and pitch black inside. From what we could see, we agreed to come back early the next day with some torches and stuff to explore. We had heard rumors that there was a closed-up mine around, but we had no idea what an old gold mine would even look like in the first place, so we assumed it might just be an old electricity servicing station or something. Sounds fun. Let's do it, we thought. We arrived early the next day for maximum daylight, and as we approached, we noticed the door was not partially open anymore, but completely closed. Odd, we thought. The wind might have pushed it closed, but we are in the middle of the woods, and these doors were massive, and as I said, had growth. They didn't move so easily. When I think back now, we never gave much thought to it. So, ahead we went. We pulled the door back, and it moved so slowly and made quite a scratching noise as it rubbed against the concrete on the ground. We took a peek inside to the pitch darkness, and we decided that someone should wait outside as we were concerned about getting lost or trapped. We switched on our torches and started on our way inside. We were walking down a slight slope. We were walking down, and we continued walking down for about 10 minutes. We could not see the door anymore due to the slope and height of the roof. When we reached the bottom, we saw in the distance the place went on, but to our right was a small building-like structure. We went inside to explore first and agreed we would only go this far for now and to return back later. What we saw in the office at the time seemed like nothing to us, but thinking back now, I can see, perhaps, there was something more sinister to it. The office building had 3 rooms. One was a small bathroom with a toilet and a tiled area that looked like a shower area, and the main office had 2 old desks, shelves, and a bed. The third room was a small pantry area. What seems strange about this now is that on the shelves and desk were toys. We noticed that they were not that old, maybe only a few years old. What the hell are they doing down here? One of us even joked about taking them as they were not that beat up. When we opened the drawers of the desk, they had Polaroid photos. As we looked through them, we noticed that they were of the room we were in, and in some photos showed pictures of the toys. In one photo, there was a shadowy figure standing in the doorway, holding what appeared to be a rope. We started to freak out a bit, but continued to explore the room a little bit more. What we found next made us make a beeline for it. We opened one of the filing cabinets and found lots of pairs of kids' shoes. They were sky blue with red stripes. We heard a small bang nearby at this point, and we agreed, let's get the fuck out of here. We made a beeline for the entrance, and we were relieved to get to the exit with our friend standing outside. He looked a bit confused when he saw us come out, just the 2 of us. He said, "Did you get caught?" We asked, "What do you mean?" He said he saw a guy come in, and he thought he was security. The bang we heard must have been him inside. We ran out of the woods and home, in case we got caught, but thinking back to this, who was this guy? Was he doing something sinister inside? I am not sure, but some years later, there was an arrest when a dog walker spotted a man leaving the mine with a small boy who was crying, and he shouted at him, and the man fled and was later caught. It makes me shiver. What could have happened to us down there, and how as naive children we never understood what we saw fully. Who knows what would have happened if we got caught down there? Hey there, and thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. And if you like my videos and want to see more, subscribe to my channel. And I will see you all in my next video.